Am I the asshole for telling my mom she can't talk to my kid about her miscarriage and take him to the grave? I have a son. I was adopted and grew up the consolation prize for the miscarriage my mom had at 20 weeks. We had to go to this fetus's grave every year. One of my earliest memories was her forcing me to give my favorite stuffed rabbit to the grave. I grew up with her venting about how hard the miscarriage was to me. And I honestly think it was super inappropriate, and it made me feel like a second option to what she actually wanted. I obviously was never good enough. I recently found out that she took my son to the fetus's grave and told him about it. I told her that's an off-limits topic and he has no business hearing about her miscarriage at 5 years old. Now some people in my life are saying I am an A for telling my mom she couldn't tell my son about his dead aunt. But I think I'm justified in not wanting him to have to hear about it too. It was literally 30 years ago. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. Your mum spent years trauma dumping on you and now she is trying to do it to your son. Your 5 years old is not her therapist. Not the asshole. First and foremost, 5 is a bit early to start talking about dead people he's never met. Second, and as important, you are the parent. She is grandma. Babysit and spoil the child. But she does not get to decide when kid is ready for different benchmarks in growing up. Bottom line is, your child. Your rules. If she doesn't agree, she doesn't get to be alone with him. Not the asshole. Everyone is entitled to grieve for a loved one. But your mom is obsessed with grieving for the baby she miscarried over 40 years ago. I was in my teens when I found out that my mother miscarried my parents' first baby and third baby. Overheard my dad say something, so I asked my mom about it. I can't imagine what it would have been like to grow up being dragged to the grave sites. If your mother is still full of sorrow, she needs grief counseling. But you are right to limit your son's exposure to her obsession. Not the asshole. Your mom needs serious mental help to be dwelling on this over 30 years. I'd be cutting her contact with her grandson if she keeps this up. Not the asshole. Your mother has unresolved trauma. As a fellow adoptee, I'm really sorry you had to grow up with this dysfunction, which sounds like it resulted in your own trauma. You can break the cycle right now by limiting your child's contact with your mother and always supervising, sending you the best. Not the asshole. I've had several miscarriages myself, and while I mourn the loss, it doesn't control my life. For the simple fact that life goes on. Even when something you love dies. Living in the past or dwelling on what could have been just makes you lose out on what's there. Which is what your adoptive mother has done. She's grieved for so long that she doesn't see what's right in front of her, a daughter and a grandson that need her way more than her deceased child ever could. And if she's not careful, she'll lose that too. For which I would not blame you in the least. Not the asshole. Your son is not her therapist. It's extremely inappropriate for her to take a 5-year-old to a grave and unload like that. Not the asshole. Your mother needed more help when it happened. Processing grief this way is not healthy for anyone. Not the asshole. I'm sympathetic to your mother. But the blunt fact of the matter is, her first child was a miscarriage. Yes, it's unfortunate. But instead of celebrating you, her successful, wonderful alive child, she made your entire childhood about the one she lost. Putting a deceased child above an alive child, especially for so long, is not okay. She needs therapy. She needed therapy 28 years ago. You tell her she gets therapy now, or you don't bring your child around her. Don't allow your child to suffer what you want through. Not the asshole, but your mother is. I understand she is sad and had a really hard time. But her attitude is not tolerable in my opinion. People shouldn't reflect their sadness on their kids this way. Not the asshole X1000. Your job as a parent is to protect your kid from trauma. Your mother sadly has a habit of dumping her trauma on little kids. You are within your rights to prohibit her from seeing your kid until she goes to therapy and learns to deal with her grief. Your child does not have to carry her grief. You suffered enough for it. She needs to learn to manage her emotions. Protect your kid. That bunny part. Soul-crushing. I'm so sorry this has happened to you, Op. This world is full of such cruelty and malice. Not the asshole. Sending you love, Black Heart. Not the asshole. A parent told me I was only alive because my brother was a miscarriage. Hearing stuff like that'll mess a kid up. This grief and misplaced guilt doesn't need to be transmitted to another generation. Hang in there. Not the asshole. You mother cannot spend her life passing her loss, trauma and grief onto each successive generation. This must stop with you. Not the asshole. The stuffed rabbit part made me so sad. Your mom needs therapy. Obviously. But also, why pass on that trauma to her grandson? There is sharing your authentic experience when appropriate. And then there is orchestrating a show to indulge your feelings. This is giving orchestrated theatrics. Even negative feelings can make one self-centered. I hope she finds peace. I'm sorry you didn't get all the love and appreciation that you deserve when young. Heart. Not the asshole. Your mother needs therapy and you need to set solid boundaries. She seems to be stuck not processing and hasn't moved through her loss. Trying to relive it with your son is completely inappropriate, especially after what she did to you. Not the asshole. Gracious. I hope you have a therapist to talk to about all that, because what your mom did is no way to raise a child. And absolutely tell her not to talk to your son about it. It would be one thing if she were just generally discussing a relative that passed. But she's not doing that and you can't trust her. Not the asshole. Your mom has some issues she needs help to resolve. I don't think that's normal or healthy behavior on her part. I'd be very hesitant to leave a child alone with her though. She doesn't seem to have any respect for you as a human being. Much less as her child. I'm sorry you had to deal with that all your life. Not the asshole. Your son is too little to deal with the trauma that woman forced on you. If she can't respect this boundary, you may want to look into cutting visits or contact. Not the asshole. To be blunt, your mom emotionally abused you. Don't let her do the same thing to your kid. Not the asshole. I lost my first in my second trimester. And after discussing it with my therapist, agreed I would not tell my daughter about it until she is old enough to process it. It's a burden no child should bear if they don't have to. And I'm sorry your mother placed that on your shoulders. Good for you for protecting your son. Not the asshole. I would have had an older sibling if things had worked out differently. Instead of being the oldest of 3 siblings. My mom didn't tell me anything about it until I was about 17-18 years old. This was only done when the topic of miscarriages came up due to a family friend's loss. Your mom shouldn't feel ashamed of her loss. But it should not be brought up to a child like that. Especially if there is that much resentment. Stand your ground. And protect your child. Not the asshole. Your mom needs some serious therapy.